That was fun. If you've ever played a base building game along the lines of Surviving Mars or the excellent Factorio and thought, wow, I really want to blow some shit up right now, but I don't want to stop building my base, well, the Riftbreaker has got you covered. A hero-led action RTS from the creators of the excellent X-Morph Defense, the Riftbreaker is Diablo with a tower defense mechanic. You take the role of Ashley Nowak, the titular Riftbreaker, as she pilots her AI-driven mech called Riggs through several hostile environments. Your aim is to create several forward mining bases across several areas to harvest resources needed to create the Rift device and to allow humanity to escape the hellscape they've made of Earth. A seamless mix of hectic combat, tower defense and base building combined with some pretty good visuals gives the Riftbreaker a good leg up over other indie releases recently. It's unfortunately marred by a clunky interface and an unforgettable story with some atrocious dialogue and awful voice acting. The game starts with Ashley getting tossed through a one-way portal to the planet of Galatea 37. Her task is to pave the way for humanity while also eradicating anything that gets in her way, namely the planet's current inhabitants. To do this, Ashley comes equipped with a 17-foot tall mech and a plethora of weaponry, more of which can be unlocked through research. Unlocking the more advanced techs is key to progressing towards building the 4 unique buildings that make up the Rift device, which will open the door for the rest of mankind to flee the sinking ship of planet Earth. The visuals are great here, and the game ticks along quite nicely at a high FPS with no issues. While the enemies look great, there is a lot of sameness to them when you start making progress, but there's a huge variety in the biomes and the plant life, giving each one a markedly different look and feel, and not just feeling like they're reskins of each other. The buildings are all well detailed and look brilliant, with some of the late stage builds being
we can balance energy peaks and shortages by storing excess energy in energy storages. Also, remember to connect all buildings to the power grid using energy connectors. They connect all buildings within their area of operation, even if power lines are not visible.
The prologue is nicely done and shows the game mechanics quite well before you jump into the campaign properly. A piece of advice for you though, take your time and actually do the prologue. You'll need to get the hang of the mix of base building and direct combat to stand any chance in this game. The more complex build options are easy to pull off once you get used to the control scheme, and during the combat it's intuitive to build up and repair your defences in between the swarms. But you could always say fuck this and head out to take on the enemies on your own. It's here that your mech's array of weaponry comes to the fore. There's your usual base of blasters, machine guns, shotguns and a flamethrower. On top of all this, there's the usual sci-fi weapon fare of railguns, lasers, miniguns and plasma rifles, along with the more exotic types like freeze guns, asset launchers and time-distorting grenades. Combined with explosive weapons like rocket launchers, mine layers and even fucking nukes, you are seriously spoiled for choice when it comes to how you want to mete out destruction. All this takes me to the core of the game, the action. It's brilliant and engrossing. I've not lost hours like this to a game since I last played the aforementioned Factorio. Riftbreaker is a case study in finely tuned action. Every time I played it, I would try and think of something that I would like to see in the game, and it would show up later on. The random events and hordes push the gameplay enough to the point where you're just at breaking point, but not overloaded. It forces you to put a bit of thought into where you're going to locate your new bases, or expanding your old ones. I've not found them to be tedious or clunky so far, it's incredible. These hordes can be immense at times, and at the higher difficulty levels can number to over 1,000 enemies. Watching these waves crash onto the rocks of your defences is exhilarating, and whether you're getting stuck in alongside your turrets, spraying death into a relentless flood of monsters, or sitting back on the ramparts watching them eviscerate everything on screen, you'll be living for the horde moments and relishing every chance to test your fire bases. The Riftbreaker isn't all perfect, unfortunately. Its indie roots do show through all the gloss, mainly in the writing and voice acting. They're both mostly terrible. There are only 3 voice actors and they all deliver their lines in a kind of dull, matter-of-fact way that clashes with whatever is going on the screen at the time. This poor delivery is compounded by the writing. Put simply, the game suffers from a massive case of ludonarrative dissonance. Ashley is portrayed as a kind of intergalactic environmentalist, yet her sole goal is to create a gate so the rest of humanity can come along and gut the planet. They've tried their best to paint her out as a hero who's just there to document and study, but there's only really one way to study an animal with a flamethrower. You'll quickly learn that "let's go here and check it out" is actually Riftbreaker code for "let's go there and exterminate anything that moves." If they'd wanted to paint her out as a kind of anti-hero, there's some scope for that, but what they've done is rendered the entire story completely meaningless. gameplay is completely at odds with the streams of nonsense that Ashley spouts constantly. She'll bang on endlessly about her desire to explore, research and coexist with a biosphere that she'll happily rip through a second later, wondering dumbly what's making the local wildlife so aggressive as she slaughters them by the wagon load with a dizzying array of often horrific weaponry. The only way to play the game is as a ruthless sadistic colonist invading a foreign planet to harvest its resources. If you can ignore the huge schism between the story and the characterization, then you'll find a game that's so good that if it were made by a bigger studio, it'd be on numerous Game of the Year lists. It's solid, well made, well polished fun, and it's a real treat to blast through. Even if you're not a fan of tower defense or Diablo style games, you'll love the streamlined mechanics, and the larger horde battles will leave you smiling with excitement. Pick this one up if you're out for something new and interesting that'll keep you glued to the screen for days on end.
I'm rerouting all power to life preservation systems.
There's too many of them. We're getting overrun. We've been destroyed.
We're pulling you out, Captain Novak. You weren't meant to survive this final attack wave. It should serve as a reminder that you should never underestimate the threat that you may be dealing with, even if you think you are in control. Your performance during this training session was satisfactory. You can start preparing for your trip to Galatea.